We're going to call this meeting to order. I want to start off with some member introductions. My name is David Rowe. I have the privilege of representing the 85th Legislative District. That includes all of Snyder County, parts of Union, Juniata, and Mifflin. I want to thank our gracious host, Representative Ecker, for having us down here into his beautiful district. I want to let the members introduce themselves. We'll start with Representative Ecker, then we'll go all the way around the table, then we'll come back to the ladies.
Good morning, everybody. We're actually in the good... We're actually in the good Chairman Dan Mal's district right now, but he and I are very good friends and partners here in Adams County. So he gave me permission to be here today. So it's great to be here. Welcome to Adams County.
Good morning. I'm State Representative Kate Klunk. I represent the 169th District in York County in the southwestern corner. But 3/4 of my family is from Adams County. I'm still an Adams County girl at heart in a lot of ways. And it's just great to be here and see our full Adams County panel.
I'm Representative Dave Zimmerman, 99th District. It's northeast Lancaster County and southern Berks. And I used to do a lot of trail riding with horses and did a lot of it around the battlefield here. And beautiful day in Adams County. Good to be here.
Good morning, everyone. I'm State Representative Robert Ledbetter. I represent the 109th District, 137 miles from here. Ag is the #1 industry in my district, as it is in the Commonwealth, and it's always great to come out to central Pennsylvania and experience not only the beautiful weather, but have great conversations. So looking forward to the testimony today.
Good morning. Barb Gleim from the 199th District in northwest Cumberland County, Carlisle and West. So I'm glad to be here, and thanks for participating in policy.
Representative Valerie Gatos. My district is the 44th District, and I am from Allegheny County, just a suburb west of Pittsburgh.
I also want to thank our attendees and for being here today, but also specifically our hosts, the Adams County Economic Alliance, for sharing this beautiful space, beautiful big windows. We can enjoy the lovely day, as Representative Ledbetter referenced. We are here today to talk about some very important things. I want to, first of all, give some time to Representative Ecker to give some opening remarks on the really important things that we're talking today. He is definitely our expert in fiscal policy, tax code. I think you'd be hard-pressed to find a more fierce advocate for the taxpayer than Representative Ecker. So I want to give him some time to kick things off. Representative Ecker.
Thank you, Chairman. And thank you guys for being here today, and thank you to the testifiers. We're going to have a really good conversation about Pennsylvania tax policy on a lot of different issues. But you know, when we talk about Pennsylvania's tax policy, we are lagging behind our competitor states. And that's unfortunate because Pennsylvania can be a leader. It always has been. We are the breadbasket state, and there's a reason for that. It's our location, our access to capital, our access to energy resources. But our tax policy is lagging, and it's hurting us. We've lost population in every census since, I think, the beginning of last century. And it's frustrating that Pennsylvania is not a leader when it should be. We've heard from folks across the Commonwealth that have invested in Maryland or in Ohio or West Virginia, and we say, well, why did you not pick Pennsylvania? And the common theme in talking to the chamber and other folks is that we didn't even consider Pennsylvania because of the tax policies that are here in the Commonwealth. It's counterintuitive to investing here in Pennsylvania. We've done some things to try to correct that. There's more to do on the corporate net income tax, but there's other things to do with other tax policies, and I think that this hearing will kind of highlight that. We have small businesses. We have somebody who represents lots of larger companies, and we also have a think tank who really looks at tax policy to really highlight some of the reasons why Pennsylvania is falling behind. So I'm really looking forward to the conversation we have today. Pennsylvania should be a leader. It can be a leader, and you want to drive revenue. We had a huge debate yesterday on legalizing cannabis. You want to talk about generating revenue? Bringing more businesses to Pennsylvania will generate revenue, and that's the way. And fixing our tax policy will do that. So thank you all for being here. Thanks for being in Adams County, and turn it back over to the chairman.
Thank you, Representative Ecker. I also want to recognize Representative Gatos, who I think has driven the furthest to be here today. Thank you very much, Representative, for being here. Representative Gatos is also carrying a bill that will probably come up today, also a passionate advocate for the taxpayer. Representative Gatos, some remarks from you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and also thank you, Representative Ecker, for also being a fierce advocate for tax policy. As Representative Ecker mentioned, that Pennsylvania is just lagging behind so many other states, and Pennsylvania used to be not only the keystone state in the founding of our country, but also we were the head of industry. We were the head of industry for over a century, and over the years, our government has just crept in and taken more and more and more from businesses and small businesses. My background prior to getting elected was being in as a small business owner, and it's one of the reasons why I ran for office in the first place. I started a business in Maryland, and people said, "Why did you do that?" And I said, because of the tax policy in Maryland, particularly for small startup companies. And my quote when I first came is that nobody should ever have to leave Pennsylvania to start a business. And that's why I ran for office. But this particular bill that I proposed is essentially to give our budget surplus back to the taxpayers. Governor Shapiro has proposed a $51 billion budget for 25 and 26 fiscal year. $3.57 billion is a spending increase over the current year. And just like all of us in our households, there's a difference between what we want and what we can afford. And we do it in our own households, and we should expect government to do the same thing. The Commonwealth has a surplus right now of $10.6 billion. We do have something called the Rainy Day Fund, otherwise known as the Budget Stabilization Reserve Fund, and that's exactly what it's for. It's to stabilize the budget, pay down debt, and save for emergency situations. The Independent Fiscal Office has determined that almost $2 to $3 billion in the governor's budget is brand new spending. And it's not just spending to pay off the past. This is actually recurring expenses. We all know in our own households that when you come into money that, and people in my district are very, very austere in their spending as well, just as you are here. When you run into money, you want to make sure you pay off your debt, you put it towards something in your future, not just all of a sudden throw it out the door and obligate yourself to further debt. We already have a structural deficit. And what that means is that they already recognize that we are spending more than we have coming in. We're spending more than we have coming in, and that's acknowledged. What that means is the only way to make up for that is increase taxes, and that's not something what we want to do. So if the administration is not willing to take the money that they have in this surplus and protect our reserves, then we should return it back to the taxpayers. And I believe that the taxpayers know best how to spend it, and whether you choose it to pay bills, invest in your future, education, or even just save it for unexpected costs, I believe that the decision belongs to the taxpayers and that we should return that money. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Very well said, Representative Gatos. I could not agree more. And that dovetailing off that is why we're here today. Pennsylvania has the ability to become an economic powerhouse. Our heritage industries of energy, manufacturing, agriculture, we have the geographical advantage, we have the natural resource advantage, we have a work ethic that is the envy of the country. But despite that, we're lagging behind. We're the 9th worst overall economy in the nation. We are the 34th when it comes to competitiveness for state taxes. We're 31st in the nation for small business taxes, and we're 41st in the nation for new business applications per capita. When we see high taxes, big bureaucracy, a labyrinth of regulatory red tape, you do not see business growth. Business capital investment, it flows like water. It flows through the path of least resistance. And unfortunately in Pennsylvania, there's a lot of resistance to that type of investment. We see businesses that are already here struggling, whether it's struggling to meet the current permitting tax structure market or the federal impacts of inflation and labor shortages, these sorts of things that are just exacerbating an already challenging time and challenging environment for Pennsylvania small businesses. When we talk about meeting revenue shortfalls or closing the budget gap, right, you've got two lines of thinking. You can raise more taxes, which is currently the trajectory that the governor's budget proposal has put us on, or you can grow the economy. And the only way that you can grow the economy is by making it easier for investors and for entrepreneurs and for business owners to want to come here and to want to stay here. We're going to hear about some of those ideas this morning. We're going to hear about accelerating reduction of the CNI tax, the corporate net income tax. Prior to the reduction that was passed by the Republican House and the Republican Senate and signed into law by Democrat Governor Wolf, a fantastic bipartisan effort that has set the CNI at an automatically declining rate. Prior to that, we were the highest CNI rate in the nation, the highest flat CNI rate next to New Jersey. And when you're losing to, when New Jersey is your standard to compare to, you're not in a great place when we're talking about fiscal policy. So I talked about the reduction of the CNI tax, talking about uncapping net operating losses. When we toured a small business last night that the gentleman was telling us about all of these massive upfront costs, investments that might take years, 5 to 10 years to pay off for him, he needs to be able to carry those losses forward. Otherwise, he will simply not be able to function. Pennsylvania is lagging behind in that as well. Talking about repealing the accelerated sales tax requirement, easing cash flow for small businesses, and also establishing the taxpayer dividend program, which we're going to talk a little bit more about later. So we have an opportunity here. Pennsylvania has the opportunity to thrive. Unfortunately, as was referenced earlier by Representative Ecker, Pennsylvania is slated to lose yet another congressional seat. Pennsylvania is losing one. We're lumped in with states like California and New York and Illinois, not states that are exactly paragons of economic stability, but we see states like Texas, states like Florida, who are gaining those seats, who are projected to continue to steal our constituents as they move to states that are getting it right for small businesses. And we have an opportunity to do that here, and we're going to talk about how we can get it done today. I'm going to take a minute and introduce our testifiers. I'm going to thank all of you for being here today. Mr. Stephen Kelly, who is a Senior Associate of Government Affairs at the Commonwealth Foundation. Mr. Isaac Bucher, who is the owner and operator of Mr. Ed's Elephant Museum and Candy Emporium, and I'm guessing that's why there's some chocolate over there by the coffee. Thank you very much. And Ms. Robin Fitzpatrick, who is the President of the Adams Economic Alliance. Thank you very much for hosting us in your beautiful building today. We're going to give each of you 3 to 5 minutes to testify. We are here to learn from you, but we also want to make sure we leave times for members to have questions, to have an open dialogue. So, Mr. Kelly, you're up first.
Okay. So thank you, Chairman Rowe and the members of the committee for having us here today to talk about cutting costs and increasing commerce in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Thank you, Representative Ecker, for hosting as well, and to the Adams County Economic Alliance. It's a great spot you have here. So I think all 3 of you in your opening remarks kind of hit our vision, the Commonwealth Foundation's vision for Pennsylvania, head on. We believe in unleashing prosperity here in the state, making the state more competitive. And you, Representative Ecker, you said it perfectly. We're losing people, we're not competitive, and we need to begin to take urgent tax reforms to make our state more competitive. Many national organizations who study tax policy have found that Pennsylvania kind of falls from the middle of the pack to the end of the pack with our other neighbors. The American Legislative Exchange Council found that Pennsylvania was 44th in economic performance, looking back at past economic policies and output, and we ranked 36th in our future economic outlook, and so our ability to bring in new business. We also ranked 28th in per capita in state and local tax burden, according to the Tax Foundation. And the data has also shown that 10.6% of the average Pennsylvania's income actually goes to paying for state and local income tax. And Chairman Rowe, I believe you also pointed out the 34th, our 34th ranking in overall tax competitiveness. That came from the Tax Foundation as well. So it's very clear to see that we're not up to standard. We're not doing better than our neighbors. Beyond any of national organizations who study tax policy, we can also just look at our labor participation. Now, our unemployment rate is at 3.8%, which is a little bit below the national average. I think it's at 4.2 right now. But when you adjust Pennsylvania, in March of 2025, when you adjust for seasonally labor force participation, we were at 61.6%, which was below the national labor force participation. And since 2020, in recovering from the pandemic, we've only had a 2.2% job growth rate, while states like Texas and Florida have been above 10% routinely. So that the overall economic competitiveness is leading to people to leave, as Representative Ecker pointed out. You know, it was funny. I was talking to my sister last week. She just got engaged, and she was talking about some of the struggles in Montgomery County, where she lives and works now, and considering leaving the state. You know, like wants to settle down here, wants to stay in Pennsylvania. Has been here her whole life, but now is seriously considering leaving. And I mean, I think that's a great shame. You know, she's a highly qualified nurse, and that is just something that we can't afford to lose those people. Since 2020, we've lost 49,000 residents in net. 14 of the past 15 years, we've been losing residents. And polling has shown consistently that people have been talking about high taxes in Pennsylvania and the cost of living when asked if they would leave Pennsylvania. And across the country overall, like, we hear it time and time again. States like North Carolina, Texas, Florida, places with better tax environments are where people are moving. And we saw from like potential reapportionment of the Electoral College that those states are all gaining, Pennsylvania's losing. So obviously that is a major issue we're watching very closely. On top of the outmigration that's going on, the population that is remaining is aging. You can't run an economy with retirees. I mean, that is just simply, to put it simply. Pennsylvania has the 8th oldest median age in the country, with fewer working age residents supporting that population. The dependency rate is going down, which is very concerning. So our population is getting older, our tax base is shrinking, and the need for social services is growing. All these trends are lining up with reckless spending that's going on, as Representative Gatos pointed out, in the governor's proposed budget. We have a structural deficit, $3.5 billion. The governor's proposed budget would increase this deficit to $4.8 billion. And without bringing in any new business or finding and expanding our tax base, we could be looking at potential future tax hikes of $1,900 per family of 4, or draining the rainy day fund, as Representative Gatos pointed out. I think when you look at these sorts of things, the spending is concerning, but it is a good example of how controlling spending goes hand in hand with good tax policy. At the Commonwealth Foundation, we've supported the Taxpayer Protection Act, which some of you may know is one tax reform that we've been a strong advocate for. It would create fiscal guardrails by limiting state spending growth to the average rate of inflation, plus population growth or personal income. It's modeled after legislation in Colorado, which has successfully limited their growth there. If Harrisburg had enacted TPA in 2019, taxpayers would have saved $23.5 billion over the past 6 years, which roughly is over $7,000 for a family of 4. And we'd actually be looking at a $2.8 billion surplus for this fiscal year. So the overall picture is pretty grim with the outmigration, aging population, and then the budget concerns and spending implications there. So TPA is one area of reform that we would strongly advocate for. Another area, as Representative Rowe, or Chairman Rowe, excuse me, you pointed out, expanding net operating losses for small businesses. The National Federation of Independent Business recently in a survey found that small business optimism declined by 3.3 points in March of 2025, indicating that small businesses are kind of feeling a pinch right now, and the ability to cover those losses would give them some assurance of, hey, like, we can come to Pennsylvania, we can invest here, and we can grow. So that is one area where we would truly, that we support, and it would truly be a great lift to our small businesses. You also pointed out repealing the accelerated sales tax. Pennsylvania, the accelerated sales tax requires businesses to remit taxes before sales are completed, which creates an artificial cash flow. And this is very, very harmful to small and mid-sized businesses who are very vulnerable to liquidity disruptions. You know, it's not really how you run a business trying to predict what your sales are going to be. Businesses change very often, very frequently. And then, of course, we would also strongly advocate for lowering the personal income tax. Currently, Pennsylvania's rate is at 3.07%. It's a flat rate. There were proposals last year. It passed the Senate trying to lower that to 2.8%. Pennsylvania hasn't had a tax cut in over 40 years. And it was 1986 we had our last tax cut. Doing that, obviously, it's allowing more Pennsylvanians across the board to keep more of their hard-earned money, but most small businesses, 82% of small businesses actually pay into the personal income tax over than the corporate net income tax. So lowering the PIT would actually have an impact on business as well as individuals. And then, of course, as was also discussed, accelerating the corporate net income tax reduction. It's currently phased to reach 4.99% in 2031. At the Commonwealth Foundation, we believe that's very low. That's a very slow way to do it. We would advocate for cutting to 4% as soon as possible, make us competitive. If we do that, that would actually make us the third lowest in the nation. And there is legislation in the Senate which actually passed with bipartisan support. And there are conversations there, and I know the governor in his budget, obviously it's higher in spending, but he has advocated for it. And I think a lot of people know that this is a popular policy and that something needs to be done. So it's definitely one solution. So just to wrap up, Pennsylvania is falling behind, but there are plenty of options on the table that the General Assembly should consider. And thank you for your time, and I welcome any questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kelly. Mr. Booker.
Chairman, members of the committee, thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to speak here today. My wife, Nicole, and I own and operate Mr. Ed's Elephant Museum and Candy Emporium just down the road. We're not too far away. This year we celebrate 50 years in business, and we are a third-generation family business, and each year we see about 150,000 visitors come through our doors, which is kind of remarkable considering we're literally in the middle of nowhere. So we are one of the region's most unique attractions. We have over 12,000 elephant statues and figurines on display, some of them life-size. We also have thousands of different kinds of candies, homemade chocolates, homemade fudge. I have some here today for you to try. But I also serve on a number of local boards and committees, and they focus primarily on tourism and economic development as well as the arts. And I see firsthand the challenges and opportunities that face small businesses in our region. I want to address several areas of Pennsylvania's current business tax environment that hopefully can be addressed to make it easier to do business in Pennsylvania. First, I want to advocate for allowing small businesses in Pennsylvania to utilize net operating losses on their taxes, just like corporations do. This would be a small but equitable policy that would strengthen our state's economy, as well as you all know, small businesses are the backbone of our communities. They create jobs, they spur innovation, yet we often face greater financial volatility as opposed to our larger corporate counterparts. Permitting us to carry forward net operating losses would provide us vital flexibility, particularly during challenging years, to help us survive downturns and also keep our staff. I know that tariffs aren't under the purview of Pennsylvania, but every single person that I speak to, whether it's a business person or a community member, are all talking about them and how they could potentially impact our local businesses. And instituting something like this for Pennsylvania could provide, especially in years like this, an opportunity and a lifeline to businesses that are directly affected by those tariffs. The second area I want to discuss is a little different because it isn't about the tax itself, it's how the tax is administered. The process of local tax collection can be unnecessarily burdensome. Pennsylvania is only one of 16 states that utilizes a local income and payroll tax. For our business, we pay all of our local income and payroll taxes to the York Adams Tax Bureau, which requires us to file a completely different, or just another separate tax return. Other states like Maryland utilize a piggyback method of tax collection, which basically means that you file one single tax return to the state then disperses that tax to the jurisdictions that they are required to go to. This is duplicative paperwork that is inefficient. It costs businesses time and money, and especially for small businesses that don't have a luxury of having a full-time accounting department. I'm the accounting department in our store, which is not always fun. So bringing the collection and distribution of the local tax, income taxes into the Commonwealth's Department of Revenue would ultimately reduce administrative costs and streamline the process, reducing accounting fees for businesses like mine. Third, it feels like we are being taxed at every different angle. Corporate net income, local taxes, sales tax, use tax, fees and licenses. The list goes on and on. We are constantly checking our backs to make sure we're in compliance, to make sure that we're doing our part to be a good citizen, but it's exhausting. There's also a broader and probably not popular topic I'd like to bring up that affects us all financially. The influx of retirees moving to Pennsylvania. While we welcome them with open arms as neighbors and community members, the reality is that retirement income in Pennsylvania isn't taxed. I've had more than one person say to me, I moved to Pennsylvania when I retired, and my goal is that I get out of here before I die. So my kids don't have to pay taxes, which is crazy to me. So that means that retirees are using public infrastructure and services, roads, emergency services, healthcare support, without contributing to the local tax base or the state tax base. And who makes up that differences? Businesses, working families. We shoulder a disproportionate share of that burden. On a positive note, I want to express my appreciation for the Educational Improvement Tax Credit, or the EITC program. It allows businesses like mine to invest in the future by directing our tax dollars to educational institutions of our choosing. It's a great example of how a smart policy can be a win-win for our community and for businesses like mine. I'd like to see more policies that give small businesses this kind of flexibility and impact. In closing, I urge you to consider reforms that simplify the tax filing process, as well as create a more equitable tax system that doesn't leave small businesses carrying more than their fair share. Pennsylvania has so much potential. I love doing business in Pennsylvania. It's my home, and it'll always be my home. But we can't unlock that if this system keeps tying our hands. So thanks for your time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Booker. President Fitzpatrick.
Yep. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, and I'm so pleased to have you here today. Commonwealth money was used to help us construct this building 25 years ago. We did so with the intention of partnering with another Commonwealth service, CareerLink. Prior to that, the services provided in a CareerLink were, you had to go to different buildings, different places to get it, and now here it's all in one, and so I'm very appreciative of that. Commonwealth money was also used for the infrastructure in this park. Our organization started this business park more than 25 years ago, and I think at my last look, we are getting more than $1 million in taxes now that wouldn't have been here without your help.
I know you don't like giving money away necessarily. You have to be very purposeful about that. Good form for Cumberland, you just got a little bit for redevelopment, Franklin for another business park, and one other I can't think of right now. But that means a great deal when you focus it, you know, like I said, with intention. So we have a lot of small businesses out here, medical buildings, which are very important, tourism and hospitality, because that, in addition to agriculture, is one of our biggest industries here. After we developed this, we were able, with Commonwealth help, to attract Pella Windows and Doors. It was their first manufacturing facility outside of Iowa. So something we're doing is working. We didn't have to throw a lot of money at them. I'm never a fan of giving grants to people to locate here, because we already have people here that have been paying taxes. And I'd much rather do that to people who are here, being the fabric of our community. I have very carefully curated remarks for you, and I've already gone off of them. You teed me up with all of your national and Commonwealth comments. You brought it in even further, talking about the small businesses and the taxes and all those sorts of things. My point in starting with the development of this park was that that is what economic development did 25 years ago. We put in infrastructure, made industrial parks, those sorts of things. Over those years, the needs or our activities, our focus has changed dramatically to people, particularly because of the things that you've each described. Our young people, and I apologize to you, 2 of my young people went to college here, Shippensburg, yay, Ship U, it's a great school. They went there and left, one to Maryland, Northrop Grumman, one to Virginia Beach, FEMA. Of course, he might not have a job long, he might come back. But, sorry, I lost my track of my thought track. So currently, we are trying to create an environment that would encourage people to remain here. So my colleague Brady over here and I, when we visit businesses, we've started talking to them about, is it hard to keep your employees? Well, yes, it is. They come and go. It's a constant door. We ask them, where do they live? Do you know what kind of home they have? How do they get here? Things like that. And to be very honest, some of them have been very confused about those questions. Why would I care about that? Well, if you're sleeping in a car the night before to get to your job, that will matter. If you don't have a car, that's problematic too, and you should always keep a spare tire if you do have a car. Or you have to Uber here from Route 15. But a lot of people don't have cars. In fact, in our recent visits, people have told us that their employees are riding bikes to work. So we started this new thing, creating what used to be specifically just social services, working with people who need services, and just business and straight talk of taxes. We're bringing all of those people, private industry and social services, together. You already know about the price of housing. People spend more than 30% of their income on housing. That's become particularly difficult here, because Adams is on the Maryland border. A lot of retirees are retiring here. And they bring wealth with them, which we love. They shop in our stores. They volunteer. But they're not the people that we're looking for to work at Pella. And so what I've noticed in my own small neighborhood is that people move here, buy up what you would consider first-time homes, and then blow them up like in New Jersey, or just use them while they build their real big mansion. Housing is a terrible issue, not just purchasing, but renting as well. We have a 1.5% rate of available rent, which is nothing. And I must tell you that what we have for folks is not great either. Economic development in an historic ag town is not a job anyone should take, really. It's the hardest thing. People don't want new business, they don't want industry, nothing with smoke, nothing with traffic, no warehouses. I mean, and all of these things are understandable. But to create good jobs here is to expand what we have, because people have already gotten used to them and let them in. Transportation is the next highest cost for people here. Most people in Adams have cars. If you have a car, you know the kind of expense that it requires to keep it running. So those are issues. We don't have a great public transportation system here, but that's for another day. Healthcare, another cost that is cumbersome at best. Healthcare costs are the #1 reason why people have to file for bankruptcy. So, bless you, Representative. With all of these things, should people be able to get a tax return? I hope I have identified for you. There are many reasons why that would be a boon to many. Pay off your debt. You've already said it. Pay off your debt. Pay for some future-minded thing. Maybe you'll get your car fixed or get new tires. I'm sorry, I didn't mean that for you. It just it came up. Things like that, that you don't do when you have to, take your kid to Walmart the night before and get a lot of stuff for a project that's due tomorrow morning. Things like that. I don't mean to be glib or anything, but in Adams, we're having fewer young people come back. We've got homegrown families with their children. Most of the people leave the county every day for work because we don't have the opportunities for good paying jobs here as much as we do in Kate's district. We're happy to drive over there. And the other thing that the business community is trying to do is help with childcare, which you've all heard of as well. That is also a real challenge to young families. So to conclude, I haven't really spoken about taxes or anything. I think you in particular did a really great job, and you with all of the statistics. But my focus now really is more on the young families being able to find a place to live, have good educational opportunities, have a good job close to home so they're not driving an hour and they can actually be a soccer coach or do things with the family that you don't do if you're driving an hour every day and you're pooped. And I think I'll conclude with that. Thank you so much for your time and listening to me.
Thank you very much, President Fitzpatrick. And I think you hit the nail on the head where not only are we want to talk about bringing people here in a holistic fashion rather than kind of picking, choosing winners and losers, but also obviously taking care of the people that are already here and preventing them from being part of this group that's just leaving for other states. I think obviously Representative Gatos' bill does just that. I want to recognize we have been joined by Chairman John Lawrence, a representative from Chester County, as the chairman of the Commerce Committee. I know that we will welcome his input here today. I know Representative Gatos has to get back to Harrisburg for some meetings and not too long of a time, so I'm going to start things off with her. We're going to take questions from members. Members may ask you questions directly or to the panel as a whole. You're welcome to answer any question. You're not obligated to answer every question, but we're here to learn from you, so feel free to chime in. Representative Gatos.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for this terrific panel. I've spent my life helping small businesses, family-owned businesses, startup companies. That's what I did for my career prior to getting elected. So I certainly commend you, Mr. Bucher, for having a small business. It's not easy. And it has been certainly death by 1,000 cuts for a lot of businesses. I believe that government is for big things. To your point, President Fitzpatrick, and actually I think Mr. Bucher, you said the same thing. You know, we talked about tariffs, and well, actually, let me go back to the small business here. Is that I do have a bill that eliminates the inheritance tax, and I'd like to see it raised, especially for small businesses, particularly small businesses who own a business with their sibling, let's say, because that is the highest inheritance tax. So if you own a pizza shop or a chocolate company with your sibling, it's outrageous. And a lot of times, a lot of small businesses, mom and pops, have to close because they cannot pay that tax. I do believe that it should be raised. So I have the inheritance tax bill that would actually eliminate the inheritance tax. We have the highest inheritance tax in the nation, if not the second. Also, I have a bill to allow association health plans to allow small businesses to pool, whether it's if you're a member of NFIB, small businesses, or Farm Bureau, you're a farmer, you should be able to pool with other farmers to be able to have that health care. So yes, health care is huge. We have a lot of these things that we could be implementing. But my question goes to Mr. Kelly, that we talk about the tariffs, we talk about manufacturing. Manufacturing was really our mainstay here in Pennsylvania for a century. And we've chased them all away with all these tax policies. So we saw in 2020 how ill-prepared we were because we didn't manufacture anything here. If you had to point to one or two policies that could help us get our manufacturing up and running, because it's still too expensive now, even with these tariffs coming in, we want to encourage businesses. What would you say are the one or two really top things that can have the greatest impact pretty quickly to help our small manufacturers and businesses create more startups?
Sure, and thank you for the question, Representative Gatos. Ultimately, I think the first thing that should really be done is to address the permitting and the regulatory environment. I think if you, we can implement the tax thing, any tax policies. Those things will take time to realize. Bringing business does take time. I think if you immediately were to just start slashing at a lot of the regulations, where we are the 14th most regulated state with over 164,000 regulations on the books. I think if we go into that and we start looking at some policies and getting a whole regulatory overhaul, not necessarily like a whole Doge per se, but we would advocate for the REINS Act. Economically significant legislation would have to be approved by the General Assembly. Starting with the regulatory environment, though, ultimately, I think would allow businesses that are here, like projects and anything that's in the pipeline that hasn't been addressed, getting those started. And then next, I would look towards going to the corporate net income tax and slashing that. Getting that done would signal that we're open for business, would help the businesses here, and would ultimately lead to more profit for them and help to all workers. So.
Well, thank you. And in fact, when the governor we all were excited when the governor had agreed to reduce the CNI, and then this year came back and said he was going to then implement combined reporting, which, look, we need big businesses and small businesses, And to require them to do combined reporting is just another, it's government giveth and then taketh back away. And we need to make sure that that does not happen. So thank you for your comments.
Thank you, Representative Gatos. Representative Ledbetter.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Testifiers, thank you so much for your testimony this morning. It certainly is insightful, and as discouraging as the current environment can be, it's incumbent upon us to apply ourselves to move out of the scenario that we're in and into a better place, not only for Adams County, my district, but for the Commonwealth as a whole. A bit of context, and then I will direct my question to all of you, but Mr. Butcher, I especially will appreciate your feedback, because as someone who has a job that should be very fun, it doesn't sound like you have as much fun as you should be having, given your line of work. So the Policy Committee just concluded a series on energy, and despite shifting into this series on cutting cost and creating commerce, this focus on economic growth cannot happen without capitalizing on the resources that Pennsylvania has. These resources are vast. It is the innovation of the constituents across the Commonwealth. It is the resolve of business owners and think tanks and alliances such as those here this morning testifying. But it's also our natural resources. The natural gas that we have, the nuclear options that we have. I would be surprised if any of you rejected the opportunity that the AI and data center space is bringing to Pennsylvania. I sit on the Comms and Tech Committee with Representative Gatos, and we have been discussing this in my district, just outside of my district. Amazon Web Services is bringing a data center that will infuse my region with a 10-year project that consists of $15 billion, thousands of jobs. These things I believe all of us would embrace, but with a prohibitive tax environment and regulatory environment, we will not be able to attract these types of investments into Pennsylvania. And furthermore, if we do not have a reliable baseload energy source, they won't even consider us. So shifting back into the scope of the testimony today, I would ask you all, when we look at other states, Maryland's been mentioned, Ohio's been mentioned. Mr. Butcher, what's the one thing that you're most envious of from another state, if you could snap your fingers and move your business? Mr. Kelly, what is the point of policy that the Commonwealth Foundation is most adamant about advocating for? And President Fitzpatrick, when you speak with the members within your alliance, what is the common feedback that other states are beating Pennsylvania in, so that we can take that and drive that policy in Harrisburg?
Okay. So I feel like I want to preface this by saying that almost a vast majority of the chocolate that's sold in America is actually made here right in Pennsylvania, which is kind of amazing. So I adore doing business in Pennsylvania because I get to say that, you know, a lot of the chocolate that we use and all of our products is made right here in Pennsylvania. But I do feel like, as we've kind of said repeatedly, is lots of other states are much more competitive when it comes to just taxes in general, of being way too high for businesses to be able to want to come here and to do business. For me, I mean, Pennsylvania is my home. I'm not going anywhere. But it would be nice that if we could be able to benefit like other states are with their tax things.
You go. It's
Thank you for the question, Representative Ledbetter. In terms of policy, I'm thinking you bring up energy, and ultimately we do have the natural resources here in the state that could really drive our economy. And I know this isn't, you guys have been having those energy hearings, so we don't need to don't get into energy policy too much. But that would be pushing for any policy wins on energy and opening up that market. I was reading just the other day, Louisiana got approved for another LNG expansion, a new program. We could be exporting liquefied natural gas here in Pennsylvania to the rest of the world, that would be helping the state tremendously. But again, as I talked about, the regulatory environment. So in terms of policy, like working to get a much more consistent energy economy going that isn't hampered, like that isn't being held back by the government would do amazing things for the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, as well as addressing the tax environment. But overall, like I said, the tax environment, those types of policies can take time to realize and get those gains. So addressing that regulatory, especially in the energy sector, would do tremendous things.
You good? To your point, one thing that businesses talk about is the infrastructure. You know, the Commonwealth has been around for a while, and so has our infrastructure. But extending infrastructure so that development can occur where you want it to prior to them locating here is so important, because that process itself, right-of-ways, I mean, think about all of the departments that would have to be involved to get an electric line down a road or a gas line and the cost associated with it. If we really want to have business come to PA, one of the things has to be that we have places that are ready for them, available and ready. We have very few of them in Adams County, but like I mentioned earlier, there are other places that are developing business parks and having everything to attract them. The other thing I wanted to mention, I apologize, is that the permitting part of things, not just the permitting, but the municipal government itself, and that's not a criticism, but every municipality has zoning. Every municipality has a different definition for what they're doing in that zone. And it's confusing to people that are coming here that are not from Pennsylvania. They don't understand why they have to go talk to 12 different people before they can even start moving through the system. Perhaps if we could, lead them along a little better. I don't know what the answer is, honestly, because we're a Commonwealth, but that's a big issue.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Klunk. Chairwoman Klunk, apologies.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think there's an equation that we've heard today of what works, right? Permitting reform, regulatory reform, C&I reduction, the NOL for small business, plus energy, expanding our energy. We could go on. And that unleashes the potential for Pennsylvania to create those jobs, to attract the small businesses that bring in our young people. Mr. Booger, you said it best, right? We import our retirees and we export our young people. And that is not the equation for success. And so I commend all of you for giving us that feedback. Unfortunately, in Harrisburg, people don't understand that equation. So I'm glad that we're here today to try and get the word out so that we can put pressure on our colleagues in Harrisburg and the governor to look at this equation. He's already started a little bit, right, on the permitting. But there's more to do on regulations. We've already done some work on C&I. NOLs, we've done some work, but not for small businesses. And energy, that's what I hear the most. Robin, just, 2 weeks ago, you and Representative Ecker and I, we had a roundtable in Hanover to talk about competitiveness. We have a competitiveness bipartisan, bicameral caucus. And the one thing that we heard, and from my big businesses, is energy. Energy, energy, energy. When we make our potato chips, our pretzels, when we can our green beans, energy is involved in that. And we are sitting on the second, and sometimes we say number one, energy deposits, natural gas energy in the world. and we're not tapping into it to help those businesses expand, bring those jobs, and run. So there's a lot of work that we need to do on energy. I want to pivot to the budget. This is probably the biggest budget that I've seen in my, now going on 10 years, which is crazy, that we have a budget over $50 billion is being proposed. And when Stephen, you explained to me that your research at the Commonwealth Foundation says that it's going to be an increase in spending of, let's just round it up to 2,000, because we know it's probably going to be closer to that for a family of four. And Mr. Bucher, you're a family of four right now with the addition of your exchange student. So we're going to count you as a family of four. And your business, you're a small business, right? You're not one of those inks. You're not paying the CNI. So what would $2,000 be an impact to you, your family, your business, if that was just siphoned off right now? How would that impact your family and your business?
So for us, having any extra money, we do as much as we can to reinvest in our business because we are trying our best. So we have a philosophy in our business, and I think that the founder of McDonald's might have said it first, but as long as you're green, you grow. Once you think you're ripe, you start to rot. And we take that motto very seriously at Mr. Ed's, where we always are trying to innovate. We're always trying to make our business better. So yeah, an extra $2,000 would definitely help us to try something new, to figure out other ways to generate revenue for my staff, for my family. So that's what I would do with it.
Well, thank you for that. And for Robin, when you hear that the governor's proposal will potentially impact those families, and driving here today, I passed a couple of those bigger incorporated entities, but, I passed the coffee shop, the butcher shop, the mechanic, the landscaper, the greenhouse. I could go on and on. They're all small businesses in our local community here. So when you look at spending like the governor wants to propose and tax policy structure for our small businesses that is not giving them that option of the carry forward, if we were to hold the line at 47.9 with our governor's budget, keep spending low, coupled with net operating loss for our small businesses, if we could get that policy win, what would that mean for all of those small businesses here in this Adams County region? What are you hearing, and how would that impact and unleash economic potential here?
I may ask you for some tourism and hospitality help here, but when we started this, we talked about how agriculture and tourism are the two biggest industries in Adams County, and neither one of them are really high-wage industries. They're the most important, but they're not high wages. But we rely on them. There is no tourism and hospitality industry here unless we can support them. As for the families, so I apologize. The wages in Adams County, I don't know how this happened, but we are, I like to say, the keystone of the South Central region. And our wages are lower than all of them around us. And the prices we have here, because we're a tourist attraction, are higher than they are in Carlisle, or Giant Food charges us more here because of the people that are coming, Walmart's prices. We end up paying more because of our attractions, and we get paid fewer wages. So anything at all coming back to a business or a family would be immeasurably helpful.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So it sounds like if we can hold the line on spending, if we can give our small businesses that truly are the backbone of our economy the ability to keep more money in their pocketbook, that money will be then passed on to the employees so that they can buy that house, send their child to daycare, live in this wonderful community, not have to drive to Maryland, be able to be their kid's soccer or t-ball coach, and we have a wonderful community. So the recipe is simple, Mr. Chairman. I just hope our governor and our colleagues in Harrisburg can see the equation and we can act on it soon, because Pennsylvania needs it. Thanks.
Very well said, Madam Chair. Representative Zimmerman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, thanks to each of you for your testimony. So, some good feedback, and appreciate that. So it's important that, we do get tax policy correct and better in Pennsylvania for the long haul. So some good information. So, Steve, just starting with you, really appreciate all the Commonwealth is doing some analysis, so we know how we compare to other states, and that gives us some benchmarks and some that way we can establish some goals on where we want to end up at. I keep getting these huge numbers when it comes to simply how many regulations we have, and I think you just mentioned 164,000. So it seems like that number just keeps creeping up, and we just add regulation after regulation. So I appreciate all your work in helping us with trying to make good decisions and introduce good legislation. So, Mr. Booker, for your business, I meet with so many business groups, and I keep saying, with business, we have everything. Without business, we have nothing, because that's really how it works, because you guys are the ones that, create the jobs, help keep the economy going and, keep cash flowing and that kind of thing. It's all comes back to business. Otherwise, we don't have it, because even in Harrisburg, the money we have is not ours. It's actually taxpayer dollars that we're dealing with. So the question to you would be, outside of everything that we've maybe even talked about, if there's one biggest challenge that your business has, what would that be? I know there's more than one.
Yeah, and I think that the primary topic here that we were chatting about was taxes, but one of the other huge impacts that Adams County in particular has is workforce. And we are one of the only counties in the state that back whenever vocational and technical schools were created in Pennsylvania did not pursue one. So now we're kind of stuck in a position where we have 5 school districts that really have not an opportunity to develop a workforce that can live and work in the county with a good high-wage job. And so I feel like workforce is definitely, like skilled labor is important for all sectors of our community in the business climate. So I would say that would be one of the other biggest challenges that we have.
That's good. Thank you. Appreciate that. And for President Fitzpatrick, Lancaster County also has, agriculture is the largest industry. We employ more people, followed by tourism. And, a big part of it is because of the Amish community and so forth. So it's huge and it's important. Even though they're not the highest paid, still very, very important for people to live and survive and preserve good farmland and those kind of things. Lots of good reasons to preserve those industries as much as we can. So I'd be interested in hearing from you and your perspective in Adams County, because one of the biggest and most important things in my mind that counties can do involving townships and the boroughs within these counties, and that is to do really good land planning.
Yes.
And so, because you need a certain amount of certainty to bring and encourage business. And therein, with all these regulations, that takes certainty away. So good land planning is huge. And so I'd just like to hear from you. Is Adams County in a good position with land planning to encourage business to come here? Is it, the right balance between having housing one place, preserving farms, and encouraging business all at the same time?
You are singing my song. It is so important. For, I would say, 20 years in this job, we had no relationship with municipalities or with our county planning office. We were strictly, head down, nose down, this is what you're going to do, put in these roads, whatever. We have the opportunity now, we've got a wonderful team together at the county, and I can't tell you how much it has allowed us to do a better job in economic development. I regret to say that locally, we tend to zone, we tend to plan to keep things out, not to include them. And your constituents have very loud voices when something comes to the community and they don't want it, even if it's zoned properly, even if it checks all of the ordinances and can be permitted and it belongs there. We're finding that projects can be chased away by the citizenry, even with all of the land planning in place. I'll end with that.
Okay. No, good, some good points. But again, all of those things, it's important and imperative that some of those are in place, because that actually helps us then to help get the right policy in place on the state level. So thanks to all of you.
Thank you, Representative Zimmerman. Representative Gleim.
Thank you all for being here today. After hearing a lot of the testimony, I think it's pretty evident that this administration is spending and taxing and regulating the state into oblivion, into a failing economic state. One of the questions that I have is, I've been working a lot on workforce in Cumberland. And the actual infrastructure part of some of the monies that we've been receiving are literally just for demolition. It's not for, the actual building up. I mean, you have to demolish it, I guess, in order to build it. And that's taxpayer dollars that we're asking, from everybody to invest in the fastest growing county in the state right now. But we don't have the infrastructure in place. We don't have the housing or the transportation, all those things. So my question is, what do you think as an economic development person or a business should come first? The workforce and that infrastructure, or the new businesses, the data centers, and all of those things that are so enticing from a tax revenue standpoint. I'm noticing a lot of our townships that are, looking at these data centers as a real revenue, boom for them, but so it's enticing, right? But if you don't have the workforce in place or the infrastructure in place, what is that actually going to do in that region? So that's been a really big question for me personally. So what do you think should come first? The workforce, the state dollars into your infrastructure, or are we going to actually just bring in these businesses and hope that the workforce, comes? If you build it, they will come type of thing. What do you think?
I worked for the Commonwealth for several years. doing the governor's action team. It's called Business PA now. And I left Adams County because I didn't like the politics. No one told me, and I'm back here now. So anyway, the reason I bring that up is because I got to, I'm in my Adams County fishbowl. And it's very good for people to travel around, particularly like you are, and seeing all the parts of it, because it's vastly different. You have a great technical, vocational, and technical school in Cumberland. For me, I would think it's the infrastructure first, because then we can attract businesses, and we have the chance to be very selective right now. Years ago, it was so competitive among counties for the placement. We were in a real fight with Bedford County to attract Pella. And the reason they told us they chose us over Bedford was because we had more churches than bars. Now, I know that doesn't fit with what you're seeking today about how you can help businesses locate here, but we will not even speak to someone now unless their wages are equal to or higher than what is already being paid in your community. We can't take workforce away from the people that have been operating here. I don't think that is a good policy at all. We want them to increase wages, absolutely, but maybe there are other ways we can help them through expansion. But still, I go back to infrastructure first. Then you have a little bit more, room to negotiate with the business when they want to arrive.
So for me, I used to be an educator, so I believe that if you have it, they will come. So if you have the infrastructure, if you have the workforce, it makes it more appealing for a business to come because they know that they have what they need when they get here. Whereas if they're investing and I don't know many corporations that kind of hope that when they show up that people are going to be there to work for them. They're going to want to know. So I feel like definitely infrastructure, education first, or workforce first. And then you have it all in place and say, okay, guys, come to Pennsylvania. Go ahead.
One last thing, and it's about workforce. When I was traveling around the state with businesses, the one thing they asked me was, do you have a community college in the community or a vocational tech school? Because they wanted to know that there was going to be a queue of people that they could hire. So we have a double whammy here. No tech school, and we do have Harrisburg area community college, but I think that's operating more online, more virtually now than in person.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I want to thank you all very much. I'm going to turn things over to Representative Ecker. I know he has a couple of questions and some closing remarks. I'll have a few of my own, and then we'll let y'all go. Mr. Bucher, I do know that you had a previous commitment, so whenever you got to step out, feel free to step out, but we're winding down. Representative Ecker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And again, thank you all for being here. Thanks for coming to Adams County. And thanks for hearing from some of our folks here in Adams County about some of the challenges we have here in our community. But, bringing this kind of back to the central issue here, we have a governor this year that's proposed a $51 billion budget that spends about 7.5% more than last year. My first budget, I've only been in office for 7 years, my first budget was about $33 billion. We're now on the precipice of looking at a $51 billion budget. That means spending's increasing. Revenues have increased a little bit through COVID because of all the money, we'll call it, federal money that got pumped into the system that got spent. So the revenues did go up a little bit, but now we're hitting a plateau. The Independent Fiscal Office has has come out. They are a nonpartisan, government or a government agency that kind of looks at or budget bills that deal with the budget or proposals, and they are telling us that the trajectory we're on is not sustainable. We love to come up with new proposals in Harrisburg, both sides of the aisle, but really the governor every year is coming up with a new plan to spend more Pennsylvania taxpayer money. On this path, right? On this path is that if you start, I think Mr. Kelly, you said we're at a $3.5 billion hole year over year right now. That's going to continue to increase. So there's been proposals out there to come up with all kinds of new revenue sources, right? A lot of them are vice type of taxes, right? Because they're quote unquote easy to vote for, right? Maybe not medical or maybe not recreational cannabis, but it's another vice tax, right? It's a way that it's going to solve all of our problems, games of skill, those types of things. But when you look at the revenue that stuff's bringing in, the recreational marijuana bill is proposed to raise about $530 million. It's a lot of money to all of us, but when you're talking about a $51 billion budget, it's a drop in the bucket. Games of skill, for those that don't know, it's a machine that kind of like a slot machine, not really, but they're not regulated currently in Pennsylvania. That's going to generate about $300 million. The governor has also proposed raising minimum wage. We haven't got into that, and we're not going to go down that too far, but the governor's proposed raising minimum wage, which from his perspective, and we can get into the politics and the actual facts of whether or not it would generate revenue, but he's saying that's going to generate extra revenue for the state. It won't, but that's, again, all these revenue ideas that the governor's come up with and the House Democrats have come up with to increase revenue are not going to increase revenue substantially in Pennsylvania. The way you do that is economic development. Bringing businesses here to Pennsylvania, increasing or improving our tax structure, and finding ways to open up opportunities for prosperity for Pennsylvanians to start businesses here and to raise families here, spend money here, is how you're going to get more revenue for the state. So we can have more programs that we might want. Not all these other, these other creative tax policies that are not ultimately going to generate revenue for the state. In fact, probably cause more problems for the state when you look at it. So you folks are obviously leaders in that market of driving economic development, driving business opportunities here. I'm curious, when we talk about that, you guys all have employees. They are our most valuable commodity as a business, right? Whenever you're talking to your employees, do they, what types of tax issues do you hear from them? I mean, Isaac, you talked about simplifying our tax code. I couldn't agree more with that. Even the forms, right? I didn't realize we were one of 16 states that had local income tax. I mean, obviously other states have it, but we have that extra form that even TurboTax doesn't even help you with that, right? It's something you got to go do yourself, right? It's another cost for somebody, for not just an employee, but also employers. What are some things that you're hearing from your employees about the struggles they're dealing with? Representative Gatos talked about her plan of just putting it on the table of, we're spending all this surplus money. Well, why shouldn't we just return that back to Pennsylvanians? If we're going to create all these new programs that aren't sustainable, then we should give that money back to taxpayers, right? What types of things are you hearing from your employers or employees about, their paychecks and how it's gone down, or how they're able to pay for expenses, or what are those conversations like?
So a lot of my employees, so I have the gamut. I have kids that are still in high school, and I have an employee who's been working for us for 49 years. So we've got the whole spectrum of staff members. And all of our adult employees, I hear them talk. I hear them talk amongst themselves about how suddenly all the costs of the things that they buy to, live have suddenly gotten much more expensive, which puts pressure on me as a business owner to either give them more hours or to raise their pay. You mentioned minimum wage. Over half of my staff are high school students. I don't feel like a high school student should be making a minimum wage of $15 an hour. Like, they're not, all of my employees, I should say, are not creating revenue for their families. They're creating revenues to pay their phone bill, or they're saving money to get a car or to go to college or whatever it is. It's not designed, like, I'm not providing them a job that they are solely living on, because they're only working 5 to 15 hours a week. So I feel like the minimum wage thing is, but anyway, back to your original question. Yeah, things are getting more expensive. It's making harder for my staff and a lot of people's employees to make ends meet.
And Mr. Kelly, you know, when we look at some of the leaders in the country of tax policy, North Carolina stands out as someone who's really, over the last couple of years, really reformed their tax policy. When you study those types of states and their tax policy, are they, you know, what are their revenues looking like? You know, what's their, you know, their economic development? How is their state moving forward in adopting these really pro economic policies?
So I don't have actual revenue data in front of me, but I think the migration data kind of tells the tale overall, as we've talked about. And more importantly, I think you just look at the job growth rate as well. You see their economies are expanding, while in the past 5 years we've barely grown past 2% job growth rate. North Carolina has grown at in the past 5 years 9.5%, Texas 10.3%, and Florida 10.5% overall in a 5-year period. And that's factoring, okay, COVID happened, there was going to be a bump, but ours is 2.2. So I think regardless of the pandemic now, it's like we've gotten past that point, and there's been time for actual growth, and the economy's opened again. And those states are continually, like, even if you factor out any of like the artificial, okay, everybody had to stop working, and now that's readjusted, you can plainly say their economies are getting back to work. Their people are growing. People are moving there. They have the workforce. Like you said, if you have it, they will come. And people are going there. They see there's opportunity there.
Yeah, and at the outset of my questioning, I talked about, you know, all these other new taxes or new revenue sources that we're trying to come up with. When you look at really what funds state government, it's income tax and sales tax. It's the two things that really drive our revenue for the state. And how do you grow those? By bringing in more workers that pay income tax and more folks to spend money in Pennsylvania through sales tax. It's not through all these other creative tax policies that are, you know, the silver bullet, if you will. It is generating prosperity, generating in-migration, not out-migration. And Steve, you know, I'm a map guy. I love the map that you guys put in there. It's just showing where people are moving with their feet and their money. I think that shows. That's why those states are prospering, because they have economic opportunities, which are then people are paying more taxes through income and sales tax, and just helps their state move forward instead of getting creative with all these cute new tax programs and things that ultimately will cost the Commonwealth even more time and money. So I think we're getting close to the end here. Mr. Chairman, thank you for having this hearing here. I really appreciate it. It's nice to have the policy committee in Adams County, and I love this committee. It's actually my favorite committee that we have in Harrisburg, because we get to travel the Commonwealth and hear from real Pennsylvanians, real business owners, real workers in Pennsylvania, to hear issues that are local. But whenever we go to all these communities that are very different, there's essentially the same things that we talk about, and it's about how we need to make Pennsylvania the opportunity for our businesses to grow, to move here, and to grow our Commonwealth. I really thank you for being here, Dave. Thanks for doing this. Thank you for all the testifiers. I think we had a really good conversation. To all my members that are here, thanks for coming to Adams County. After this hearing, last night we were supposed to go to Hollaballs. Unfortunately, we were debating one of those vice taxes we were talking about last night, so we had to cancel that. So I would encourage everybody, It's not too far up the road. It's a great little orchard. It's uniquely Adams County, dealing with. It's one of our orchards here in Adams County. So on your way out, if you don't mind stopping at Hollabaw's, it's a good, like I said, the quintessential Adams County spot. And then go to Isaac's afterwards. It's a really cool spot as well. So, Mr. Chairman, thank you for the opportunity, and I'll turn it over to you to close.
Thank you very much, Representative Ecker. I just have a couple of very brief questions, and then we'll wrap it up. Mr. Kelly, those numbers that you cited, if the Taxpayer Protection Act had been instituted since 2019, I think you had said since then each Pennsylvania family would have saved, was it $7,000? Is that what it was?
$7,267 to be exact.
Perfect. And then that would have saved how many billions Commonwealth ride, right? Instead of looking at a 51 billion, what was the total statewide number that you cited?
The budget surplus would be $2.8 billion in
Perfect.
fiscal year 24-25.
So we're looking at a budget surplus of a couple $1 billion instead of right now we're staring down a budget deficit of a couple of $1 billion. And it's important to recognize, I think, for people who are not familiar with what the Taxpayer Protection Act would have done, it doesn't stop government increases in spending. It just allows government increases in spending to be linear with the growth of the economy instead of exponential, which is what we've seen. So it's just exactly this type of policies that we're discussing here today, how meaningful that is over the long term. Because if just 7 years ago, and 2019 was actually the year I entered the State House, 6 years ago, we had enacted the Taxpayer Protection Act, we wouldn't be having a conversation about all these new ways, whether it's skill games or cannabis or no matter what new, we wouldn't need to be talking about how to close a budget deficit because we wouldn't have one. But we're in a tougher spot now that we are staring down an existing deficit, but it's not too late. We can still get our house in order. We can shift the conversation where the governor wants to talk about all the new ways he can take money from constituents through vice taxes and tax increases and this, that, and the other. We want to figure out how to spend less so we can take less. And there's a very responsible way to do that. And this map, I think, Mr. Kelly, that you provided is exactly why we're here today. When you look at where people are going, the numbers don't lie. We're losing a congressional seat. California's losing it. New York is losing it. Massachusetts. And they're going to places like Texas and Florida and Arizona. The numbers don't lie. Mr. Bucher and President Fitzpatrick, I'll be very brief. When we started this session off with the policy committee, one of the recurring themes we wanted to revisit was the importance of still achieving the American dream and being able to do that. And tragically, according to this map, it looks like a lot of people are achieving their American dreams in other states and leaving Pennsylvania. And last night we met with a small business owner who told us that his dream was to have his business be the first multi-generational business in his family. And I think that is such an inspiring dream. But he's struggling, and it's hard. And whether it's the regulatory burden or the tax burden, it's hard. So from your perspective, what is the number one thing we can do to help people like you, Mr. Bucher, more people do what you've done, and President Fitzpatrick, more people achieve the American dream, right? Whether it's an entrepreneur, a small business owner, a current small business owner who's struggling, somebody who maybe wants to leave, what can we do to help more people pursue and achieve the American dream here in Pennsylvania, not in Florida?
That's a very good question.
Yeah.
For our business, allowing us to just eliminate the red tape, be able to expand and not have all the red tape. I mean, that's not necessarily a tax thing, but I feel like the American dream for me is not achieved with a corporation. It's achieved with a small business. And that's, for me, that's my focus. I love and support as many small businesses as I can because they're the ones that are sponsoring little leagues and being the soccer coaches and things like that. Everybody relies on Amazon. But they're not necessarily doing that in our community.
I think this is a little off topic, but I would say that I think affordable education of all skills, whether it's a 4-year opportunity or vocational technical, because with that, you can your world opens up, and that's it. I just think if we had a way to help, I know we're trying very hard. There's K through 12 job exploration and all that sort of thing, but I think we need to be more purposeful in how we manage that system and guide people.
I think that's very well said, President Fitzpatrick. Just yesterday in the Capitol, we met with an inspiring young woman who told us that education is for everyone, but school necessarily isn't, depending on your life path. And Jamise, if you're watching, I'm giving you credit for that quote. But I think exactly what you said, right? Allowing people to pursue their American dream requires them to be able to pursue that education. And for some people, that is a 4-year degree. For some people, that is a CTC. For some people, it's just the ability, like me, not the 4-year degree program, not the career and technical program, but starting my own business. And that was my pathway. And so I think making sure that every Pennsylvanian has the ability to do that. Education policy is a great segue, President Fitzpatrick, because that will be our next hearing that we're going to be having in Philadelphia on Monday, May 19th. So I once again want to thank all of our testifiers. I want to thank the members who took the time to be here. I want to thank Representative Gatos, who did have to step out for her leadership on presenting the legislation, and obviously Representative Ecker for hosting us here today, for being such a stalwart advocate for taxpayers. His constituents are very fortunate to have him. I want to thank you all for being here today, and this hearing is adjourned.